I'm gonna be honest, that direct, that week, I really didn't expect things to go that way. Just in case you're not in the know, and if you aren't, why'd you click on this video? Nevertheless, a recap is in order. We were a week away from the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct when we got hit with a Nintendo Switch 1 Direct. In that Switch 1 Direct, I was surprised to see two fairly big games that genuinely got me excited, those being Tomodachi Life Living the Dream and Rhythm Heaven Groove. And of course, how could I forget, we got a bit more information on Metroid Prime 4, not too much, but enough to hold fans over for a week. During the 5-day span in between Directs, I could only feel my hype growing. If the Switch 1 Direct was as good as it was, then the Switch 2 Direct should be amazing. Briefly before the presentation, it was confirmed that the Switch 2 Direct was going to be around an hour long, so at that point I gave up on predictions and just let my excitement take over. So much so that I pretty much didn't sleep the night before. But the seconds leading up to the presentation were amazing. There was this pure anticipation in the atmosphere, and as I was with my friends, we were all wondering, what the hell are we going to see in this Direct? And honestly, the Direct didn't disappoint. Well, not entirely. For the most part, we got big reveal after big reveal. Mario Kart World, unexpected Switch 2 features, a slew of third-party games, surprises like new chapters of Deltarune, whatever the Duskbloods was, and a new Kirby Air Ride headed by Sakurai, as well as, of course, Donkey Kong Bonanza. It was a lot to take in, and admittedly, because the hype had been so high for so long, I was greedily hoping for a little bit more of the exciting first-party games, but overall, it was great. Now, with that said, what immediately followed the Direct is still vivid in my mind. Delirious from the lack of sleep, I was still kind of out of it, but nonetheless, talking and getting on calls, spreading my enthusiasm for the console. And then, my friend sitting next to me turns to me and says, the console is $450 and the bundle with Mario Kart is $500. I of course respond with, that's more than I was hoping for, but is somewhat reasonable. And then, seconds later, he says, Mario Kart is $80. At that moment, a grand wave of dread came over me. At first, I denied it, saying that can't be true, while looking for the official website. And then he shows me that the official website says the same thing. And even though Donkey Kong was $70, which of course is still a lot better than $80, I could only feel frustration, disappointment, and disbelief. What's worse is that right after I figured out that I lost one of my belongings. It wasn't very expensive to replace, but learning about that following the price of Mario Kart sincerely felt like the end of the world. And then, of course, later that day and later that week, the whole tariffs thing came into play, and the pre-orders got delayed. Believe me, I've done my damnedest to get the Switch 2 on launch day, and luckily was one of the ones who got a pre-order in when they first came out, which, side note, was a fiasco to go through. The only reason why I got one was because my friends and I were communicating and found a pocket from Walmart, of all places. Listen, even though I went as far as shelling out the extra $30 for the physical edition of Mario Kart, it still has been frustrating. Right as we climbed our way to the peak of excitement during the Switch 2 Direct, what followed was a steep drop into dread and weeks of lingering anxiety. I recently released a video going over the element of new enthusiasts and how delighted I was for there to be many more as the Switch 2 releases, which you'll see linked in the top right corner of your screen. And I can't help but feel that the flame has been extinguished by these prices. I just don't see a lot of people wanting to get into the expensive hobby that is Nintendo if the prices of every game can go upward to $80, especially during a time when the cost of living is high enough as it is. And, well, that sucks. It sucks that what could have been an exhilarating new era for Nintendo enthusiasts is now turned into an era which will more likely dwindle the numbers of Nintendo enthusiasts. At this point, I've already begrudgingly accepted things as they are. I'm not happy about the price, but I prefer to spend my time up until release feeling the joy about the content of the console and games. I recommend that to every other Nintendo enthusiast, but I completely understand those who are unable to turn away from their frustrations, not to mention there will be enthusiasts that have to retire, at least temporarily, as they won't be able to afford the new console. It's annoying. when I promised to make this video, I thought I would be talking about how thrilled I was about the console's release and everything we would learn in the Switch 2 Direct. Yet business is business is business. When a company has an opportunity to squeeze the cash out of their consumers, they will always take it regardless of how their consumers feel. Although, I do think there's something to take away from this mess. It will obviously go down in Nintendo's history how much controversy the release of the Nintendo Switch 2 brought. But this isn't the first time Nintendo flubbed with a console. As a matter of fact, it shows history is repeating itself yet again. Nintendo has kind of made it a reputation for themselves, where every time they make a new console that is a direct successor of their previous console, the successor doesn't do as well as the original. Actually, Nintendo has always made a console with a direct successor, and they all follow this pattern. The SNES wasn't much of a technical leap from the NES, it was certainly an upgrade, but no features that made every NES owner feel the need to eventually get an SNES. They were also competing with Sega at the time. Then, while the Nintendo 64 didn't do well, the GameCube did worse, because Nintendo wasn't giving any reasons to buy their console over their competitors, who had features such as the PlayStation 2's ability to play DVDs. The Game Boy Advance and 3DS did fine, but weren't as streamlined as their predecessors, and of course, the Wii U was marketed poorly and attempted to replicate the lightning in a bottle that was the Wii. Honestly, we should have expected this. It was a perfect time for Nintendo to make a direct successor to the Switch as they rule the hybrid gaming space with their yet-to-be a threatening competitor. For all intents and purposes, the Switch 2 was the smartest choice to make, a choice that could have led to a direct successor doing almost as good as, or even better than, its predecessor. But Nintendo did the thing they do. This time, what they screwed up was the price of the games and the push for expensive accessories. So, will the Switch 2 still be a success? I don't know. It could if it became more affordable, but there aren't any signs of that happening anytime soon. Maybe it's specifically the software that won't sell well. Maybe this move Nintendo is making is temporary so that people will still buy the Switch 1 and make it the best-selling video game console of all time. Or maybe I'm just plain wrong about the lashback and people will still swallow their pride as they end up getting the console and the games anyway. I know I have. There's no telling where we'll go from here, though I theorize this console's life will be just like its release. Great decisions followed by poor decisions, followed by great decisions, and so on. Buckle up, because we're about to face a generation that will be a roller coaster of emotions. Which is what I would have ended on if I released this video before the pre-orders came out. It's most likely because I got lucky and now I'm certain to get a Switch 2 on release, or maybe it's because I've seen multiple people and content creators pointing out the over-exaggeration of the situation. But I feel the need to end this on a positive, optimistic note. Yes, the Switch 2 generation will probably be a roller coaster of emotions, and while that can be daunting, to me it's also a little bit intriguing. I mean, think about the games we're getting. Mario Kart World, the Dusk Bloods, Kirby Air Riders, Donkey Kong Bonanza. They all seem to be these super ambitious games packed to the brim with personality. These games show signs of Nintendo becoming even more unpredictable than they already are, and it's really easy to feel bitter about all of this. But imagine the surprising moves Nintendo can come up with this generation. I bet you can't, because we all surely couldn't imagine Mario Kart would be $80. All I'm trying to say is that whether you're getting the Switch 2, waiting to see if it becomes more affordable, or just forgetting about the hobby altogether, Nintendo themselves are up to a bunch of funky stuff, and that is something to be interested in, regardless of whether or not you'll be consuming as much of their products. To me, a roller coaster is always terrifying when I'm in line. I often spend the hours waiting with butterflies, frightened about what's going to happen, worried about what's already happening. But every time, and I mean it, every time I get on that ride, and the momentum ignites, my emotions turn from terror into a pure, joyful thrill. Outro time. Thank you for watching the video, and thank you to my new subscribers and those who have watched my other videos. Any interaction helps my channel and fills me with a determination to make another video, so I will always appreciate a like, a comment, and of course a new subscriber. I can't promise another video by the end of next month, but I will promise another video by the end of June. I think you can guess what it'll be about. Alright, see you in the next one.